Hello, and welcome back to another episode. This time being a part of our telehealth series here on the channel, where we're sharing more information about running a telehealth practice, how to find clients, how to run that business successfully. So, in this video, this is going to be for you if you are starting a telehealth practice or you're planning to incorporate telehealth into your practice, but you need a software or a platform in order to start seeing clients. And in this video, we're just covering a few things to consider when looking for these platforms and which ones to start up with, as well as some different examples of some softwares that I've used and that I have seen around the internet floating around that I know other practices are using. And just a reminder that if you are new here, my name is Morgan and I'm a physical therapist, and I have been working with therapists and healthcare providers just like you since 2020. I've had my own cash-based physical therapy practice since 2019, and it's been amazing. It definitely brought back the joy to me in my career as a healthcare provider and as a PT with working with patients compared to when I used to work in corporate healthcare. And so here on this channel, I'm sharing everything with you about how to run a successful solo practice, particularly if you are cash-based or private pay, and how to work for yourself full-time so that you can ditch the 9-to-5 grind. If you are looking for any guidance or help along your journey with starting and growing your business, please definitely check out the different services and programs that I have to offer at morganmeese.com. So, getting into the telehealth stuff and picking a telehealth platform, there are definitely a few things to consider. The first one being, I always tell everybody, the first thing that you need to look for is just ease of use for both you and your patient. It needs to be easy for you to set up, for you to access, and also easy for you to explain to your patient how to use it. And then on the flip side, on the other end, the telehealth appointment and the platform need to be easy for the patient to access as well. If there's like any kind of friction, it's going to make it really difficult to work together, and that will translate over the long term in people being less likely to work with you, especially if you are online, just because it's hard to get there. So it needs to just be super easy to use and super accessible. And definitely bonus points if the platform is easy to use, whether it is mobile or being accessed on the desktop. And the good news is that most platforms are flexible and adaptive in that way, but just something to make sure of. As you are looking into these different platforms, something that I always recommend to everybody when they're first getting started with telehealth is to do a couple of practice telehealth sessions. So whether it's with family or friends or like a practice client in some way, your spouse, whoever, do a practice telehealth session and run through an entire evaluation so that you are able to figure out, does this software work for me? And is it conducive to doing a full assessment and the full treatment model for what my services are? That is going to be really helpful for you. And so that when you do end up with a paying client in front of you, you've already practiced and you feel a lot more comfortable with it. The second thing to consider, or I guess maybe third thing at this point, is do you want your telehealth platform to be integrated into your EMR or EHR system, or would you rather it be a separate thing? And I'll show you some examples of what this looks like when we get into the specific softwares. But some people, just for like going back to the ease of use thing, they prefer to use a telehealth platform that's already integrated into their EMR. And so when you go to create telehealth appointments, it's really easy to set up, versus some people are okay with things being a little bit more pieced together. So something to consider with that. And lastly, you do want to consider the cost. I'm going to show you a range of options from free to paid and just kind of go over the pros and cons to each of them, so you can take a look at it and see what is going to work best for you. So with that, let's go over a few different examples. The first one that we are going to take a look at is this platform called Doxy.me. It is, as it says, the world's most loved telemedicine solution. It is super easy to use. I have not used it as the provider on my end, but I have used it as the patient, and it's very simple to access as a patient. patient, and I'm sure that it is super easy to use as a provider as well. And there are lots of different features that make it simple to use. One thing that is nice with this is I know there is a waiting room available, as you can see here. So if you are with a client online and then you are seeing somebody after that, you can have the waiting room enabled so that people aren't like popping into the session before their appointment starts, which on something like Zoom or Google Meet that we're going to go over as well, depending on how you have things set up, if you're using the same room code and you don't have the waiting room or waiting list enabled, you might have a little bit of like overlap and just kind of like tech issues with that. So something to look into and something to test, but I think that's definitely a really good feature. Of course, it is HIPAA compliant. It can be accessed on multiple different platforms, so all major desktop and mobile browsers. No downloading or installing things, so that is a pro over something like Zoom. Your client doesn't have to get anything extra, or I know when I have used Zoom in a lot of different ways in the past, sometimes I open my Zoom client for the meeting or for the appointment and it has to do updates, and then I end up being late to the meeting. So with Doxy, it is super easy to use. And we can see here just like some different information about Doxy for providers. So the patient view, there's like a chat, the queue like we talked about, meeting history, and for pricing, their like lowest tier option is free for like unlimited calls. It's HIPAA compliant, virtual waiting room, and of course there's tons more features down here versus like if you wanted to upgrade it, then you would have like higher quality video, screen sharing, check-in notifications, customizable waiting room, all these things. And of course you can check these out at this link. But this is a good one. It's so simple. Simple, easy to use, and I believe it is the same link. So like I could make a link that's like doxy.me/the well physio for my practice, and it would be the same link to give out to everybody for the appointment. The next option is to use Google Meet. So I am a big fan of using Google Workspace for your documentation when you're first getting set up. Included in that is using Google Meet for online appointments. This is what I typically use for my appointments. And there's lots of information here. There's support for HIPAA compliance. One thing that I think is really nice about Google Meet is that it does have a live caption option, which is really interesting. So as you're having an appointment with somebody, if you or your patient are hard of hearing or require the captions for better just accessibility to the meeting, you can have these live captions on, and that might make the ease of seeing somebody online a little bit better, just depending on you, on your patient population. But that is something that is unique. I don't think any of the other platforms have that, so could definitely be helpful. But Google Meet is also super easy to set up. It works typically in any browser from a link. There are different links for every single meeting, and while you can use the same link over and over and over again, if you don't use it for a certain period of time, I believe it expires. So that can get a little bit hairy, but if you're using a scheduling system like I use Acuity, or you're using Calendly or something to book appointments, it will auto create new Google Meets for you every time, so you don't have to worry about, whether the link is still good or not. So Google Meet is always something that I recommend. When the telehealth boom first started a few years ago, Zoom, of course, was all over the place and still is used all the time for meetings. Like I said, a con with Zoom is that you do have to download the software, and so that may or may not be a barrier with your clientele. But most people are really familiar with using Zoom, so that is definitely a pro for Zoom. Google Meet is becoming a little bit more widely used, but I still will talk with people who have never used it before. So there's like a little bit of a barrier to entry with that. But either way, both softwares are very simple. And Zoom, of course, has a ton of different features. It can integrate with a lot of different software. So you might see more integrations with Zoom than you do with Google Meet, and definitely more than with Doxy, at least from what I know. So if integrating with other softwares is important to you, Zoom could be a good option. But I do believe it does require a paid subscription for the HIPAA compliance, and they might have changed it. That was the last time that I looked at these different options, but I believe that they do require a little bit of an upgrade. So versus Google Meet is included in your Google Workspace account and Doxy is free. But of course, this is at the time of the recording of this video, since these softwares have been available, over the past 4 or 5 years now, they've changed a ton. Their pricing has changed a ton. What's included in every tier, it changes. So you'll just have to get the most up-to-date information from the website. So the three different standalone options are going to be Doxy, Google Meet, and Zoom. At least as far as I know, those are definitely the top three. And then I wanted to show you three different options that are within an EMR. So if that is something that is important to you, these are a few different options. So the first one is Practice Queue. This was one of the softwares that I first used when I first got started in my practice. It, as an EMR, is great. Something that worked really, really well for me, especially with scheduling. At least the last time that I used it, you did have to do an add-on upgrade. I want to say it was about $10 a month to add telehealth to your plan, but then it allowed for built-in telehealth meetings with clients. So the ease of use was much better. And overall, as an EMR, this works really well for scheduling, billing, documentation, and it would have the telehealth in here too. Another option that is really popular as an EMR is Simple Practice, and Simple Practice also has built-in telehealth. HIPAA compliant, of course, easy to start video calls from everywhere. You can screen share, which is always a great option if you're showing exercises or reviewing a client's video of themselves doing an exercise. Being able to screen share, pause, highlight certain things, that can be great in clinical practice as an intervention to help your clients to understand what's going on. Sharing anatomy videos, of course. And it looks like there's also a built-in whiteboard, which can be great and definitely helpful for, drawing diagrams for patients to explain different things. And then the last one that I wanted to share, this is a newer one. I remember seeing Healthy when I was first looking for EMRs when I started my practice. And I think they've done a ton of upgrades and updates since I had looked at Healthy in the past, but it could be something maybe for me to investigate a little bit more. As an EMR, it could become a front runner potentially because it has a ton of features that Simple Practice and Practice Queue also have. And it does have built-in telehealth as well. So virtual sessions from any device, HIPAA compliant. I think this is really cool, this side by side here. I'm not sure if the other two softwares have this, but your video call here and your notes side by side makes documentation super easy to do. And of course, you can have group sessions and all that jazz, video conferencing like everywhere else. And the other interesting thing about Healthy that I had not seen before is that they do have a starter plan. And so this is getting a little bit more into just EMRs in general, but for entrepreneurs and practice owners just getting started, you can have up to 10 active clients, which is a lot. It's a lot more than I've seen previously. And they have scheduling, payment processing, invoicing, super bills, documentation, telehealth, client portal, the mobile app, all included in the starter option, which could be great and definitely sparks my interest of something that I might want to look into. So for you, might recommend looking into it. I haven't used this software before, but just in my research, I thought that this was really interesting and potentially promising. So those are a few of the different options, and keep in mind that there are going to be tons of options out there as far as the platforms and softwares go. And these are some of the ones that I might recommend when you're first getting started, in particular Doxy, Google Meet, potentially Zoom. I'm more of a Google Meet fan myself just because it's really easy to set up. In another life, if I were to start over, I probably would use Doxy. In the future, if I end up doing more telehealth, I might try out Doxy too. But I think either way for you, it's a good idea to have a plan for if you do definitely want to work with people online, or even if you think it's not going to be a major part of your practice, just having an option kind of in your back pocket of what you would want to use. So then that way, if it does come up where, a client might say to you, oh, I can't make it to the session today because I have to watch my kids, or, my car's in the shop, I can't make it to the clinic, or my house is a mess, and I can't have you coming over. Whatever a barrier to you seeing a client in person there might be, if it is applicable and if it makes sense for you to still see them on telehealth, it can be a great alternative to seeing people in person. And overall, the good news is that there are a lot of different platforms and they're all fairly easy to set up and work with. So I hope that this helps. Leave a comment down below what software you use or plan to look into, and definitely check out the rest of the telehealth playlist here on the channel, because we have other information out there about how to actually conduct telehealth sessions, how to market for telehealth, and helping you just grow your solo practice. I hope that this was a little bit helpful to get the wheels turning, and I will plan to see you on the next one.